I gotta say, Canadian politics is what we would call absolutely insane right now. You see, since they resumed Parliament after the summer break, Pierre called not one but two votes of non-confidence, and they got rejected. They got rejected by the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, and the Liberals, and even the Independents. And now, after going through all that, after going through a lot more controversies, a lot more scandals, you have the Bloc Québécois that actually supports the Conservatives. It supports this vote, this upcoming vote of non-confidence that's going to happen this week. And we don't really know which day. Could be today, so you're going to want to stick around for the full video. It could be tomorrow, it could be Wednesday, it could be Thursday, it could be Friday, and you get the point, right? But we're just heading into craziness because the Bloc now fully supports Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party with their vote of non-confidence. And there are so many rebel, just like angry liberals, and all you need is 14 additional votes, and that could be the independents, that could be some rebel NDPs or rebel liberals. So this is very exciting. I'm not saying that we're going to see an early election, but we may actually see something that we haven't seen yet in Canadian politics. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I want to encourage y'all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get into today's video.
Questions.
Oral questions. Questions orales. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Pierre Poilievre.
More proof today that this Prime Minister, this weak Prime Minister, has lost control of spending. The Auditor General reports that his government gave out $3.5 billion of so-called CEBA loans to companies that did not qualify, a total of 77,000 of them.
Wow.
That's 10% of all recipients. On top of that, they then gave a massive implementation contract to high-priced consultants at Accenture who cost $200 million and farmed out a lot of the work to Brazil. Isn't it more proof that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption?
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, I find it ironic because for the member from the Mission, Maskey Fraser, actually sent me a letter advocating for CEBA loans to support a small business in his own riding. You see, Mr. Speaker, he understands the value of the CEBA loans because it was a lifeline for small businesses during an unprecedented time, and so we're going to continue to help support businesses, keep their doors open, keep their lights on, and keep their employees working. Mr. Speaker, I find it's unfortunate because yet this is another example of a letter that the Leader of the Opposition did not know about.
Ooh, that's not received very well in the House.
Mr. Speaker, our members champion their constituents who are eligible for assistance. Not 77,000 companies that should not have received the $3.5 billion in misspent dollars. All this while Canadians are starving. Today, the hunger report is out from Feed Ontario, and there have been 1 million Ontarians who lined up 7 million times at the food bank after this Prime Minister brought in a carbon tax on the truckers and farmers who bring us our food. When will they axe the tax?
Yeah, not pause the tax.
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, of course, we thank Feed Ontario and the food banks across this country who do amazing work. Let me quote from the report that was just mentioned. In June 2022, those over the age of 75 received a permanent 10% increase in old age security alongside inflationary increases. After that change, the percentage of food bank visitors who were seniors began to decrease. This, in addition to the measures we put forward for families, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to deliver for Canadians while they oppose at every opportunity.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, over the last 5 years, food prices in Canada have increased 37% faster than in the United States. That gap opened after the introduction of the carbon tax, which this government now, with the NDP's help, wants to quadruple. The consequence is that in the last 4 years, food bank use in Ontario is up 86%, and 1 in 4 children go to school hungry, according to this government's own data. So why won't they axe this crazy plan to quadruple the carbon tax. In fact, why not axe the tax altogether?
The Honourable Leader of the Government.
Not pause it. We want it gone.
Mr. Speaker, yet another example of the Conservative leader talking about one thing and doing another. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to supporting children, we have been negotiating school food agreements that are helping actually 200,000 children across this country.
200,000 kids is costing us like $5 billion.
He talks about lowering taxes, but last week he made every single one of his MPs vote against a GST tax cut for Canadians. He also talks about wanting to hold an opposition day, but we gave him an opportunity today and he ran away from it. Mr. Speaker, that's what weakness looks like when it comes to leadership. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Few short years, the Prime Minister has lost control of the deficit of immigration and of our border. He gave us a 2,500% increase in the number of unprocessed refugee claims, and he still thinks that 3 million temporary residents are going to leave this country voluntarily. Canada is staring down the barrel at 25% tariffs thanks to his open border policies, his free drugs for everyone plan, and his economic vandalism. The Prime Minister can mitigate that all today. Where's the Canada First plan to keep our border safe?
They don't have one. NDP's policy is non-delivering politicians.
Speaker,
That's what it stands for.
Serious. She supports the leader of the opposition who sat idly by in government while they cut money to border enforcement at the Canada-U.S. borders, cut at the immigration refugee border. And for those of them that are saying this is ancient history, we proposed an asylum reform package in May, and you know what the Conservatives did? And the clapping.
His hands are shaking.
The Finance Committee, they voted against it and voted it down. They can support us in our asylum reform if they so choose. I encourage them to do so.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Speaker, they've been in government for 9 years. They've known for years that immigration was out of control. They knew for years that asylum claims were out of control, and they knew for years that our border was broken. None of what newly elected President Trump has been campaigning on was a secret. And the Prime Minister even threw that minister under the bus for his incompetence in immigration. If we're going to save Canadian jobs, we need a plan yesterday to fix the disorder at the border. So I'll ask again, where is the Canada First plan to keep our border safe?
The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Refugees and Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, this is from the gleeful authors of the Barbaric Practices Snitch Line. That was their approach to immigration when they last had a chance. We have been very serious with President Trump about our intention to secure the border. It is something that we clearly intend to do. They have an opportunity to do a number of things, and that is to support any asylum reform that we put in front of the House. I encourage them to break their silliness in the House and to do so.
Speaker, for 8 consecutive years, food bank usage has risen in Ontario, a timeline that matches the corruption and incompetence of the NDP Liberal government. They caused the cost of living crisis, a crisis where even 25% of Ontarians who have jobs need to use the food bank. Canadians deserve relief from this cost of living crisis. So will the Prime Minister cancel his plans to quadruple the carbon tax and call a carbon tax election now?
Nope. That's what we want to see.
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Youth.
Well, great news, Mr. Speaker. Last week I was in PEI where we announced another province that has
Nails on a chalkboard, eh?
National School Food Program. That's 184,000 kids this school year that will receive food at school. Almost 1.5 million more meals at school, Mr. Speaker, for a program that the Leader of the Opposition contends doesn't exist. I challenge him to ask those 184 children who are getting food at school. They'll school him, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's the NDP Liberals that have caused this cost of living crisis. More than 1 million Ontarians had to use a food bank last year. The NDP Liberals still can't do basic math. They still don't understand that if you tax the farmer who grows the food and tax the trucker who ships the food, you're taxing the families who then buy the food. So this Prime Minister has completely lost touch with reality. So will he take a walk in the snow and call a carbon tax election?
What a Canadian diss, eh? Take a walk in the snow, bud.
The Honourable Leader of the Government.
I love this country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative members of Parliament are so ridiculous. They had an opportunity today to put forward a vote of the confidence in the government, and they decided not to, Mr. Speaker. So yet again, we see Conservative MPs talking out of one side of their mouth, but when it comes time to acting, they just can't deliver. Mr. Speaker, we are here to work for Canadians, and we're doing real things that are delivering for real Canadians, like school food programs, like the Canada Child Benefit, like dental care, that are helping Canadians make ends meet while all they do is puff hot air. Thank you, Mr.
Speaker. Order. The Honourable Member from Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, while the Liberals try to distract Canadians with tax tricks on Christmas trees and alcohol, more than 1 million Ontarians turn to the food bank to feed themselves. Food bank use has risen in 8 of the 9 years this NDP Liberal government has been in power. In the last 2 years alone, food bank usage in Ontario has risen by 73%. Wow. Worse, almost 25% of those food bank users had jobs, providing more evidence that the Prime Minister's cost of living crisis is deepening. Canadians have had enough, Speaker. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing? Call a carbon tax election right now.
Don't pause the tax.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Tax it. Get rid of it.
Minister of Finance.
Giving a tax break to Canadians is real, Mr. Speaker. When you go to the cash, when you're trying
It's only 60 days, though, according to you, Rachel.
You're not going to pay GST. When you go to cash at the grocery store, you're not going to pay GST on everyday items, Mr. Speaker. When you go to the restaurant, either. This is real money back in the pockets of Canadians. The Conservatives talk about vulnerable Canadians who are having a rough time. They vote against support for Canadians on every single occasion. They stand up in this House and oppose a tax break. They're opposing a tax cut, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative Party of Canada, they've lost all sense.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, Canadians are worse off. The U.S. GDP is up 2.8%, while the Canadian GDP is only up 1%. The Canadian GDP per capita is down 0.4%. This is the 6th consecutive quarter in which the Canadian GDP has been down. This Prime Minister does not have a plan. So will he step aside for a Prime Minister who does?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of, to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
I think that member is misreading the numbers. Actually, Statistics Canada just revealed that they needed to revise the GDP numbers upwards for the last 3 years, Mr. Speaker. Canada is expected to have the highest GDP growth in all of the G7 next year, Mr. Speaker. I think what the Conservatives are trying to do is to change the channel. You see, just a few days ago, they opposed a tax break, Mr. Speaker. They opposed cutting the GST from everyday goods for Canadians, and they don't know how to explain it.
You're literally approved a 60-day pause
Speaker, after
on a tax.
9 years, Canada faces
and then you're doubling
another threat to its economy. The U.S. has threatened a 25% tariff on all goods exported from Canada. This greedy government has increased taxes with the carbon tax, housing taxes, increased capital gains taxes. Mr. Speaker, this is not just bad vibes. So will the Prime Minister admit that it's not bad vibes, but bad policy that forces Canadians to suffer?
Here.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Export Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, the Prime Minister led a Canadian delegation to Florida to meet with President Trump. They had a productive discussion on border and economic security, including the impacts tariffs will have on both Canadian and American consumers. In 2018, it was this government that renegotiated NAFTA, which led to record trade just last year of $1.3 trillion, Mr. Speaker. As we have done through 3 American administrations, we will continue to stand up for Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I just can't stand the sound of Liberals.
I agree with the NDP leader who said the Liberal government will always step in to make sure unions have no power. The minister's Section 107 referrals took away workers' rights to strike. As a result of this, Conservatives believe that this Liberal government has lost the confidence of the House of Commons. Now, this puts the NDP and the NDP leader in a tough spot. Will he support his own words, support workers, or continue to prop up this NDP Liberal government, or will the government throw their coalition buddy a line and call a carbon tax election?
Wow. You know, throw some W's in the chat for that. That was good.
Order. Order.
That's the first order of the day.
Minister of Labour and Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, you would think this was not from the party that supported the anti-union oppressive Bill C-377 and Bill C-525. You would think this wasn't from the party who has in its own policy handbook the fact that they will be bringing in right-to-work Alabama-style legislation into this House. You would think that that wasn't the party that refused to debate that very motion this morning in this House of Commons.
He's laughing about it because he knows he had to fake the enthusiasm.
So his defense of his decision to take away a worker's right to strike is to talk about some things from a few years ago. Unions have unilaterally condemned the Section 107 referrals, and the NDP leader said he intervenes to take away unions' power. That's true. He took away the Teamsters' right to strike. He took away the ILWU's 514's right to strike. But when Unifor 1541 asked him to intervene to prevent union busting, this minister disappears. Right. But the leader of the NDP has a choice to make. Will they keep propping up these guys that make these anti-worker decisions, or will he just stand with his words and vote against?
I'm going to ask all members, please, to remind themselves that they have to keep their voices down so that those who participate
shut up, Greg,
can hear the interpretation. The Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
You would think that wasn't the party that opposed 10 sick days for employees in federally regulated industries. You would think that that was a party that didn't have right-to-work Mississippi-style legislation in its policy platform. You would think that wasn't the party whose very leader decried the involvement of unions in the procurement and other processes. Mr. Speaker, this Conservative Party is anti-worker. They've proved it on every single occasion that they're able to do it, and we will always stand for workers in this country.
The Honourable Member from Peterborough-Kawartha.
Today, the truth will be revealed. The Conservatives have put forward a non-confidence motion using the quote from the NDP leader where he said the Prime Minister is greedy and anti-worker. So what will it be? Will the leader of the NDP sell out Canadians yet again, or has that Prime Minister made another backroom deal that puts both of their lust for power over the rights of Canadians?
Yeah. He keeps saying he's fighting for Canadians, so do it.
For Labour.
I guess that member's back from announcing the housing projects in her riding that she voted against in this House of Commons. It is a joke, Mr. Speaker. It is a sick joke to watch these Conservatives line up behind this leader and his fake, false bravado, putting motions on the floor of this House. Then we ask them to debate those very motions. What do they say? No, Mr. Speaker. They refuse to debate their own motion. They will not debate help for Canadians. They will not debate tax cuts. They will not debate any support for Canadians in this House of Commons. This is a sick joke.
Wow. See, I don't take any joy in him throwing that little tantrum.
Order.
It just looks pathetic. He wants to mute the mic. Son of a bitch! You son of a bitch!
General exposed $3.5 billion for ineligible CEBA loans thanks to this incompetent Liberal NDP government. They were too incompetent to run this program themselves, so they gave a sole source contract to Accenture, a multinational corporation that gave most of the work to Brazilians, not Canadians. Canadians got taken to the cleaners for more than $300 million. Why are third-party contractors running this government and covering up ministers' incompetence?
Here, here. Good job. Good job.
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, it's nice to know that there exists a report that the opposition can read without a security clearance. The member opposite and his party
Nope.
every single time.
I don't like that.
Care about small businesses when in fact
That's discrimination.
and support forward for small businesses, they always vote against it and decline.
Because he took his glasses off. She's making a reading joke.
Mr. Speaker, the CEBA loans were there and helped nearly 900,000 small businesses keep their lights on, keep their doors open, and keep their employees working. We will continue to be there to support small business, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mission Mashpee Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, today the Auditor General released a bombshell report on the Canada Emergency Business Account. It highlights serious inefficiencies, a lack of government oversight, and $3.5 billion in losses to ineligible recipients. So how did we get here? The report outlined that the third-party program administrator, Accenture, set their own pricing, wrote their own contracts, ran procurement, and received 19 uncompetitive contracts for $313 million. Why can't the Liberals administer a government program without breaking a conflict of interest law?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, I already talked about the fact that there exists a report that they can read that they don't need security clearance for. So here's the real bombshell, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to security clearance, there are more allegations that have come forward with regards to foreign interference in the Conservative Leadership Party race. Yet the Conservative leader chooses to ignore these security breaches in his own party. If the Conservative leader actually cared, he'd have nothing to hide. So, Mr. Speaker, can the leader of the Conservative Party get the clearance, take the briefing, and protect this country?
Stop pretending to care. You're a Liberal. We know you don't care.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's border and immigration are key issues for the incoming Trump administration. It's no surprise the immigration minister was left out of the Prime Minister's mayor election.
We like him, man. I'd love to see him as a Conservative.
Have now placed our economy at risk. With IRGC agents hiding behind the refugee program to avoid deportation, can the public safety minister, who did make the trip and whose department finally got around to designating the IRGC as a terrorist that they are, share what he's doing to kick out every single terrorist from Canada? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Immigration and Refugees.
Again, Mr. Speaker, we see a member of the House constantly making things up. We are very, very concerned about any foreign agent working in Canada, whether it's as part of any purported terror. The enforcement agencies in our country work diligently to clamp down on these people, to arrest them, to bring them to justice, or to kick them out of the country. We'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Right on.
I hope you enjoyed today's video. That is the end, everybody. If you did, make sure to smack a like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay fully updated on what's going on with everything Canada. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.